Republicans have majorities in the House and the Senate, and we have a Republican president.
Look at this.
Right?
Republicans are already going back on what they promised last year at the RNC. They're already cutting mass deportations, and they're cutting...
Okay, you don't have an issue with the Constitution. You just have an issue with democracy. That's it. That's what's happening here. If it is the case that Republicans, one party, has control of both chambers of Congress and the presidency, and you still can't get a law passed, that means that there's not enough support for that law. That's not an issue with the system. I see people in chat doing it too, of like, Congress just doesn't work. Congress is ineffective. No, Congress is exactly effective. Congress's job is to represent the will of the people and to pass the laws that the people want. But the reason these things don't happen is because there's not enough people, there's not enough agreeance on these things. We can't agree. Congress is literally doing exactly their job. They're passing nothing because we can't fucking agree on anything. Re-ask your question. I'm so sorry. The skepticism in my brain is fucking me up right now.
Do you believe the Constitution is a living document?
Not in the way you're thinking, no. I tend to advocate more for textualism than the living Constitution.
Sure, and that's all right. But do you believe that all of it is just supposed to be an originalist view, and that the founding fathers were set in stone in their beliefs, or rather, should not be changed?
No, they literally gave us a process to change it, so that inherently cannot be. It can't possibly be the case.
Sure. So if we were to try and change it today, do you think that would happen? Because I don't think it would.
No, I don't think there's really an issue that enough of the country agrees on for a constitutional amendment to happen. There's too much non-agreement.
Sure. Would you say though there are things that need to be changed?
How do you define need to be? Like,
for starters, the 14th Amendment.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So what do you? I don't mean like what things would you want to change. I'm saying how do you define?
Well, I mean, we have a jus soli, I believe is how it's pronounced in the Latin, type of birthright citizenship in the United States, where born on the soil is the only prerequisite to be a citizen. And I don't believe that is correct. I believe we should have some type of grandfather, or rather, not like in a literal sense, but some type of...
I know what you're getting at. But still not the answer to my question. I'll ask it in a different way because it might have been confusing. Like when you use the word need, some like stuff needs to be changed. Where is that like ought coming from? Like why would anything need to be changed? What's the like moral impetus or the...
Yeah, like you said, there's a gridlock in our country that we can't move past, or at least we have a very hard time moving past in terms of Congress, right? I mean, you have APEC buying 90% of the current members of the 119th, over 60 senators in the Senate. So we need to understand that there are huge interests at play that influence these types of, I guess, lack of a better term, compliance with the Constitution that we shouldn't have as citizens. We as citizens should be allowed to want to change things.
Of course. So I'm gonna ask you guys. It's still not an answer to my question. When it's not? I'll rephrase again in a different way, and maybe you'll get it. When does something become? You kind of touched it there. You said we as citizens should be able to want to change things. Obviously, that's true. But when does something go from this is something we kind of like, this is something we want to change, or versus something we need to change? Like, this has to change.
Sure, I believe we need to change the 14th Amendment because it has severely destroyed our own population base, clearly shown to be an exploitive loophole for those who want to come to the United States and then stay in the United States and then abuse our labor market, and then also just erode our cultural identity entirely.
Why would that be a 14th Amendment problem and not a law problem?
For starters, what do people use to gain citizenship in the United States if they're not already a citizen? They either move here legally, which unfortunately we have a lot of people doing, or they do it illegally. And that is done either through the use of having children here, which I will say, people are going to say, oh, you're calling me a racist. It's done by white Europeans too. It's done by Polacks. It's done by Ukrainians. It's done by Russians. They come here for vacation, pop out a baby, and then say they're going to stay. So I don't believe that anyone should be allowed to do that, let alone people from the Northern Triangle or Eastern Europe, Western Europe, anything. Just as a quarter. What?
Don't worry about chat. Ignore chat. don't worry about chat. Or it's me and you. Okay. So, but even the issue the issue that you just laid out is not a constitutional issue. That is a law problem. I specifically identified the issue of people moving here and then having kids here and then using the fact that their child that they just had is now a citizen due to the 14th Amendment to gain citizenship themselves. A loophole, so to speak, right?
Sure.
But the Constitution's not creating that loophole. All the Constitution allows for is for that child themselves to be a citizen. if that's your issue, if that's the thing you've identified that you're like, this is bad and this is being abused, then that can be addressed through the law. No constitutional amendments needed there. The child would still be a citizen, but you can make it to where citizenship on the basis of having a child that is a citizen that gained citizenship through birthright citizenship, that cannot be a reason for you to gain a green card or for you to gain lawful permanent residence or for you to gain citizenship. You can just change that law. Boom.
Said, the amount of, like you said, there's no agreement in this country on that type of matter. Unfortunately, people don't think that there needs to be any change. So how do you go about making that change lawfully, like you described, without altering the Constitution entirely?
Well, why? Without it's infinitely harder.
Well, the 14th Amendment.
It's infinitely harder to pass a constitutional amendment than to pass a law.
I mean, it's infinitely hard to pass anything at that point. Like,
I mean,
why are you racist? Lol.
Current Republicans have majorities in the House and the Senate, and we have a Republican president.
Look at this.
Right?
Republicans are already going back on what they promised last year at the RNC. They're already cutting mass deportations, and they're cutting the $150 billion.
If it's the case, this is just you just have a problem with. You don't have an issue with the Constitution. You just have an issue with democracy. That's it. That's what's happening here. If it is the case that Republicans, one party, has control of both chambers of Congress and the presidency, and you still can't get a law passed, that means that there's not enough support for that law to where it should be passed. I have a huge problem with Republicans. Yeah, I have a huge problem with Republicans. So then, if you have one party control and that party still can't get something passed, it's because not enough people want it. So
I mean, same thing was in 2022 same thing was when Biden controlled the House. I don't believe he ever controlled the Senate. Correct me if I'm wrong. I may be remembering it incorrectly, but even when Democrats controlled both the executive and Congress, they didn't pass a huge bunch of, oversweeping bills that influenced politics or were what their voters asked for. They still suffer from this type of gridlock.
Yes, if what you're referring to, so for one, Biden did pass like a pretty good amount of legislation, but if you're referring to stuff like when you say like the stuff people want, if you're talking about like codifying abortion or things like that, like maybe.
Sure,
what else is the fucking what else is the fucking left? Like you get my examples, like the big things that the left pushes for, right? Like say like public health care, right? Those things didn't happen. But again, I'm going to have the exact same argument for you. This is what you have to contend with. I don't think you can because this is just true. This is just factually true. That's not an issue with the system. I see people in chat doing it too, of like, Congress just doesn't work. Congress is ineffective. No, Congress is exactly effective. Congress's job is to represent the will of the people and to pass the laws that the people want. The reason nothing's getting passed, the reason these big things don't get passed, and in your case, if you want a law to change the way birthright citizenship works with respect to the parents, where parents can't use the citizenship of the child they just gave birth to in order to gain citizenship for themselves, like if you want that law, that's fine, you can advocate for that. But the reason these things don't happen is because there's not enough people, there's not enough agreeance on these things. We can't agree. Congress is literally doing exactly their job. They're passing nothing because we can't fucking agree on anything.
I mean, you kind of called my argument like 2 minutes ago when you said, I don't agree with democracy. I don't really. I think it doesn't work.
But then advocate, like make that argument. Make that argument. Don't come in here but like, well, we need to change this and this. Well, no, we don't need to change these things. We just need to we need to tear down our entire, with your worldview, we just need to have a new form of government. That's
the founding fathers didn't like democracy. That's why they created the Electoral College. That's why they didn't let the senators originally be elected by the people. It was elected by legislators of the state. So, I mean, I just think there's a lot of, I guess, historical ground to say even our founding fathers didn't like democracy. So why we have such a firm grasp that we are a democracy, which we're a mixed democracy.
I was gonna say, all you're actually you recognized it there at the end. You're not actually all you're actually doing is pointing out the differences between a republic and a democracy. But like you're saying, yeah, we don't have a direct. I agree. We do not have a direct democracy here. We did not establish a system of direct democracy. That's true. That doesn't. Nothing that you just said. Nothing fights the point of the reason these things don't happen is because there's not enough agreeance to make them happen. So your argument, ultimately, if I strip all the bullshit away from your argument and just leave it at base level, it's just we should have a new system of government. It sounds like, actually, I don't know. You sounds like you lean in favor, or you lean towards dictatorship.
What have I said that's a dictatorship?
Well, because we can't have the. So you're objectively saying that our current system doesn't work. Our current system is based on the will of the majority. You need the
Feudalism
majority
would
of
be better.
you need the majority of people to agree on something to make anything happen. Right now, we don't really have. There's the majority of people don't agree on really anything, so nothing's happening. So you would need a system in which a few people,
Feudalism.
maybe not one, maybe not dictatorship, but you need like a couple of people to make all the decisions unilaterally.
Yeah, we should definitely have a feudalist system.
What happens when people that completely are on the opposite end of the spectrum of your worldview are the leaders, and they just do everything that they want to do completely outside of your will?
Are you familiar with the French Revolution? No, I'm kidding. No, I'm
We had
kidding.
revolutions every time.
No, I'm kidding. Well, first off, Jefferson did say we should have a revolution every 20 years in this country, but
I'm the quote and the context of the quote are two completely entirely separate things. Do you think he meant
no, the context of the
every
quote
20
literally
years?
says
Let's do
that.
a civil war every 20 years.
No, Jefferson literally said every 20 years the Constitution should be either completely or partially amended to fit the current electorate that is in the country.
Yeah, there was like I kind of thought that's what you were leaning when you opened the whole entire discussion with the living constitution thing, of the idea of like we should change it more frequently.
Yeah,
It's been pretty stagnant. Yeah. Do you understand that we even if I take that argument, which like in a way I kind of do, like I'm super chill with constitutional amendments if we can get enough agreements to like if it's like the whole society wants a thing, that thing should happen. Like if most of society is like, why the fuck are we not doing this? That's a good question. We should be if most of society wants it, right? But we just end back up at my original argument of none of even our governmental system isn't the issue here. Our system is our issue is the population.
Our system is our problem is
do
like
not agree.
APAC, dude. Our problem is like both parties being adherents to very specific policy goals that doesn't change from administration to administration, regardless of party. And that is really in part of Federalist 10, which was on factions, I believe. Jefferson wrote as well, talking about factions, how dangerous they are. And we've reached a point in our democracy where the factions are so large you cannot escape them regardless of party.
You only did it briefly, but I want to ask you, in your head, do you think that if APAC was just like, if someone snapped it's fine. If someone snapped their fingers and APAC was gone, do you think that's the differentiating factor?
No,
we would get an amendment now?
No, that's a very hyper-specific example that I'm citing. Obviously, you know that, but it's a good example at that to show how specific one policy issue can be and how, regardless of party, regardless of administration, people push for it and see its success. I mean, we still send $3 billion a year to Israel on top of the $12 billion we sent them this fiscal year alone. That's $15 billion fiscal year 2025 and $250 billion since 1980.
I understand we send Israel a lot of money. What's stopping an anti-Israel person from being elected to office?
For starters, you get labeled an anti-Semite. If you speak out against Israel, they conflate Israel to Semitism, or rather Judaism as a whole, which the two are very different. You can be a Jewish person and not support Israel, but you cannot be a, let's say, Christian that doesn't support Israel, because then all of a sudden you're an anti-Semite.
Okay.
Which I don't really think there's any disagreements there, or at least I would hope not. I'd love for you to show me where there's an anti-Israel person in Congress that actively says we shouldn't support Israel outside of the squad. Squad is a very specific thing.
Well, I mean, the basis of my claim was never that like there's a bunch of congressmen that don't. I'm saying what's the factor? Let's say I hated Israel with all my heart. I was like the country again. Like, I mean, you do have to make that differentiation because people will just be like, you're fucking anti-Semite. Like, I agree with you there. Like, it happens. They'll say, like, I was just like, this is a fucking dog shit country. We've got to stop working with them and supporting them in any way, shape, or form. If that was my position and I ran for Congress, other than
you're not going to get elected? It's that simple.
Yeah, so that's what I'm asking. So I'm asking you that question. What is preventing me from winning that election? What's
for starters, the United Democracy Front, the super PAC of APAC, which is not actually super PAC, United Democracy Front spent over, I think, roughly $150 million per candidate to dethrone anti-Israel congressmen. And they got 3 senior congressmen. Who was it? It was someone in New York. It's on the tip of my tongue. I'll Google it, but Brother Ilhan Omar is in Congress. I'm well aware. She also comes from like one of the most liberal places in the United States, along with Rashida Tlaib and who's the woman from Washington? That's
kind of funny. You just touched on exactly what my next point was going to be. Isn't it weird how we can actually, it seems to be the case that there's no amount of money that Israel could dump into her primaries, or that could have been dumped into her primary, or that if she gets challenged for her seat, why the fuck did she win? If your claim is like, oh, Israel just like
no one ran against her. AIPAC didn't have a candidate to run against her.
Okay, so no one ran against her. AIPAC didn't have a candidate to run against her.
AIPAC
So they're so powerful.
They didn't throw support.
They're so incredibly powerful that they'll make goddamn sure that if you don't support them, you never get a seat. But their problem in her election was that they just didn't have a candidate that they could put in that slot.
Well, they're a bipartisan group. They didn't have a Democrat or a Republican that could have ran against her and won. They only choose candidates that can win.
Oh, isn't that isn't that interesting?
No.
No one could have beat her because she was so popular in that district. Weird. It's almost like
it's also like the most Muslim district in the United States.
It's almost like the issue. It's almost like the fucking issue.
Brown people.
Okay, so her constituents voted for. Do you not understand? Like, you're not getting where I'm going here. The issue, it's wrong that her constituents liked her and voted for her. That's the issue here.
Absolutely, especially when she hates America and she married her brother. No,
all
I'm
right,
kidding. I'm kidding.
All right, there's a level of stupid that I can't tolerate.